Up next, Authentically Detroit sits down with Kamau Jawara, the Southeast Michigan lead organizer for We the People Michigan, to discuss public safety narratives in the city. But first, this week's hot takes from Bridge Detroit. Mural dollars denied, and community concerns, confusion over Brightmoor stormwater plan. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Hey, it's Stephen Henderson from WDET and Bridge Detroit. If you love listening to Orlando and Donna's incisive interviews and conversations on the Authentically Detroit podcast, I hope you'll also listen to the podcast I host, Detroit Today from WDET on Detroit's NPR station. Detroit Today is a daily podcast where I talk with community leaders, elected officials, and residents of Detroit, the region, and the state about politics and the values that animate our communities. Listen to Detroit Today every day on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Cass Corridor at the WDET studios. We're a content partner to BridgeDetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
You hear that voice? Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We finally have Donna back with us in the studio today. Happy New Year, Donna Givens-Davidson. We missed you.
Oh, thank you. I missed you too.
Can't wait to find out. Can't wait to find out what you've been up to other than recuperating, because I know you didn't not work if I know you. We are recording this week's episode on a Thursday due to the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. However, we cannot pass up the opportunity to sit down with today's guest, Kamau Jawara. Kamau is the Southeast Michigan lead organizer for We the People Michigan. He made a great thread on X, formerly known as Twitter. Y'all remember when Prince, he was the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yes.
Yeah, detailing public safety narratives in the city, their history, and how we should utilize them moving forward into the election season. Kamau, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm, of course, excited to chop it up about that and many other things.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation, to the point I never really go on Twitter and say, yo, I'm excited that we have this guest coming on the pod. But I'm like, we have Kamau coming on the pod. All right, Donna, Happy New Year. I'm really happy to see you. How's the day finding you? How you been? Let the listeners know what's going on, because you have been missed. Shout out to Charity Dean for doing a great job filling in for you.
Yeah, she's amazing. And we we talked about last year needing our bench of guest hosts in the event. One or both of us is unavailable, and Charity is certainly more than up to the task. She did a great job, and I want to thank her profusely, because she's a busy woman, and to show up here makes a difference. But no, I've been recuperating from, it seems like, when you get sick right now, it's like nobody had a cold for a couple of years because we were all socially distancing and masked up. And now it's like there's 101 varieties of colds, COVID, flu, RSV. And I've got grandkids, and I love my grandchildren. But when I got sick the last time, my granddaughter came over. She said, Gigi, I made you sick. I gave it to you. So she was really feeling worried about me. And when she found out I was better, she was cheering, and that just made me feel so good that she actually was upset and cared about making me ill. So thank you, Luna. So I'm engaged in a passion project this year. All of ECN is a passion project for me, but this is
we've moved on from the sickness. I told you that she probably was doing stuff,
falling into the project,
and now we're going into the project. Go ahead.
So I closed out last year really talking about a project, and I'm still working on this initiative, the Black Detroit Democracy Project, because it's an election year, and we have a weak democracy in the city of Detroit. Detroiters don't vote. And we don't vote in large enough numbers to have our votes matter. And voting alone doesn't change public policy unless you can influence the politicians you're voting for or get people to run for political office to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And the right thing is, the whole point of democracy and the whole point of voting is not voting. Our ancestors did not die for our right to vote. They died for our right to have power and freedom and liberty in the United States, to have equal access to amenities. Mm-hmm. And when voting doesn't deliver on those promises, then we have to go back to the table and say, what's wrong with our democracy and how do you fix it? So I have some ideas in mind that we need to focus on issue identification, listening to people who don't vote, and finding out what would motivate them
instead
to go
of
to the
speaking
polls.
For people who don't vote, because that's what I see.
Speaking for them or speaking down on them.
Yeah.
Calling them apathetic, as though apathy is the kind of mindset that poor people have. Meanwhile, we have a city where rents have gone, dramatically higher, and the average wages have not. And the average wages of Black people who live in our neighborhoods have really not gone up in comparison to the rents. So the things we celebrate are only enjoyed by a subset of our population, the subset that votes. And it's not because those other people don't vote. It's because our public policy is not structured to deliver on their needs. And so I have this ambitious idea that if we can empower, give voice to, and engage more people in the political process in all aspects of democracy, from issue identification to candidate selection, monitoring what candidates are doing and holding them accountable, and voting. And also, ballot initiatives, direct democracy, and to the extent our government is letting us down and not performing on not delivering on its promises, if our rights are being violated, we have the right to sue and demand, some type of remedy from the courts. And so reminding people of our rights, reminding people of the whole purpose of voting and the whole purpose of democracy, and understanding that without democracy, we don't have any influence over what happens around us. So it's extremely important. Let's not give up on it. Let's just get more engaged.
Come on, Louds County. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's bring that up south spirit back. Let's do it. Let's go. I'm ready for it. Well, I'm glad to see you. Happy New Year. We've not seen each other, and I'm glad that you're roping us into some of the things that you're working on. And of course, you're going to hear more about the Black Detroit Democracy Project right here on Authentically Detroit. Come on, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm well. I'm also I think that's just resonant for me. Of course, us being a base building organization, we're tackling how do we engage with an election during a year where many people are not excited about either of the candidates for very valid reasons, and how do we, of course, change people's orientation around the vote to understand how it's a choice and can be strategic. And so it's cool to hear that that's a project that you're working on.
And the reality is none of this is going to be possible without people like you. And I just got off the phone with Brandon Snyder and others who are in the field doing the work without us coming together, because it's not a me thing, it's an us thing. And the beautiful thing about what happened in Lowndes County was it was not about a messianic leader. It was about people rolling up their sleeves and making it happen and understanding that, we are all the Messiah. It's not one of us. And I'm not trying to be up front and center. I just soon have other people there. I just believe the work needs to be done, and that God gave me a vision, and I'm going to act on it, and a purpose, and I'm going to act on it because it's harmful seeing our power in Detroit continue to shrink and our influence in Detroit continue to shrink in a city that our ancestors fought so hard to make ours. So let's fight for it.
Yeah.
So I'll be in touch afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're talking to Brandon, we ain't far. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm well. We're settling into the year. There's a lot of things happening, of course, election, but also other, organizing that we're doing, both in housing, energy, public safety, education. And so I'm just excited for what's possible this year, and have kind of just jumped in and have been enjoying it so far. So
all right, well, it's good to see you.
So how are you, Mr. Important Orlando Bailey? You like the VIP?
To redirect it back to you, I guess.
VIP, okay.
What are you talking about?
I'm still bad about it. I'm like, wait a minute, is this man literally holding the conversation at the Detroit Policy Conference?
Yeah.
Where he's leading these conversations, interviewing the governor. You're on, Channel 4. I'm like, whoa. I'm just so honored to be in your presence, Mr. Bailey.
Whatever.
Orlando P. Bailey.
Don't forget to add that P.
No,
add
every
that
time.
P, baby. No, I'm doing well. It is Bridge Detroit has a new executive director. And so there's a lot of conversations right now, a lot of meetings, a lot of vision casting and, things of that sort. And so working on a lot of stuff in my day job, because I do got a day job, right? People think like, okay, what do you do? I'm like, I work for Bridge Detroit. I'm really excited about some really cool things that Urban Consulate has in the hopper this year to be announced, but I can tell you that it's big. I mean, it's going to be really, really big. And been shooting some stuff with Detroit PBS around a new documentary that Henry Louis Gates Jr. is going to be premiering. We're going to have a screening here with Dr. Gates, and so that's going to be cool. And then, again, Donna and I had this conversation before, gifting myself some solitude. You know what I mean? Like, over the break, I got to know my house again because I have this fly-by-night relationship with my crib, and I don't like it because I pay way too much for those amenities. Donna was talking about rent prices. I feel what you saying. People be like, "Yo, what's up?" Oh, I be like, "Nothing but the rent, homie. What you got on it?" You feel me? So it's been good though. It's been good, and I'm blessed. I can't complain.
I've read the book or heard about the book Rest is Resistance.
Yeah.
And one of the things being sick helped me do is understand that, this mindset of productivity is killing us, literally killing us. And I had to rest. And it was really, really weird because I didn't do any work.
Yeah.
I couldn't do any work. I was too tired. I was too sick.
Well, I'm glad.
And I didn't do any work. It was forced rest.
Y'all, she was trying to come in here. I'm like, you are not coming in here. No. She was like, but I'm feeling a little better. I was like, no, it's false.
I was
it's false.
Because that's what happens, right? You start feeling better and you get out too soon. It's like, okay, now I can get back to productivity.
Like, nope.
So this new thing, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to wait a day or two after I feel better to go into work so that I can make it stick. And but it's really reframing our minds to understand that busyness does not necessarily accomplish much. You can get so drained by being busy that you're no longer productive.
Grind culture ain't it. I'm with you. Yeah, it's not it.
So I'm really trying to make sure that I remember that and remember to rest. I think I saw something that Kat Stafford posted today about something along those same lines when somebody was asking advice about, work. And I think that a lot of times we are of the mindset we have to prove ourselves. That whole, a black person has to work twice as hard to get half as far. And then if you're a woman, maybe 2.5, so that people can actually see us as their equal. And we can spend so much time in our young lives doing that we forget that that's already a crazy mindset. And that we don't have to keep doing that.
Burnout is not a badge of honor.
Well, it's not just
Kat Stafford.
Oh,
that's what she said.
That's what it was. Is burnout is not a badge of honor. But especially you were a very young leader, and you're a young leader now. And people don't take you seriously. You have to say something twice as hard or be twice as smart as everybody in the room in order to be heard. And if you're not careful, that becomes you.
Yeah, we always in organizing we call that like your internal hater, your troll, or the thing that you constantly tell yourself publicly that it informs how you behave publicly. That is like has nothing to do with the public. It's all private. Of like, oh, I feel this way, and now I have to, substantiate it in real life. And so, I definitely feel that.
Yeah, move on from it. Move on. Squash that internal hater. All right, y'all, it's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. For Hot Takes, mural dollars denied. This is by my colleague Malachi Barrett at Bridge Detroit. Listen to this, y'all. The city council refused to pay a New York nonprofit $215,000 for 6 murals intended to spruce up downtown ahead of the 2024 NFL draft that were painted without approval. The decision could open the city to a lawsuit it would likely lose, said Corporation Counsel Conrad Mallett. Council President Pro Tem James Tate said the work was done in violation of the city charter, which gives the council sole authority to approve contracts. Street Art Mankind Court commissioned the murals on privately owned downtown buildings. None of the artists are Detroiters, which deeply frustrated local muralists. The city was billed $215,000 for flights, Uber rides, hotel rooms, artist compensation and equipment. The contract was rejected by a unanimous vote. Council President Mary Sheffield questioned why public dollars can be used to improve private buildings, since the law department previously argued that general fund dollars can't be used for private purposes. Purposes like, I don't know, fixing up people's homes that desperately need it. Mallett said a coalition of downtown and economic growth entities involving in bringing the NFL draft to Detroit decided that enhancing public spaces would be in the public's best interest. Mallett said the council should have been able to decide whether that's an appropriate use of public funds. Councilmember Angela Whitfield Calloway said Detroit taxpayers shouldn't pay for murals on private property, especially when the city council doesn't have oversight. Council members grilled planning director Antoine Bryant about why the work was able to occur before a contract was approved. Bryant said the city was in conversation with the nonprofit for roughly a year, but the murals were painted last fall without permission. Bryant said he executed the contract in error after the work was completed. Donna, I know you got a lot to say about this.
You know I do.
What say you?
Okay, you're going to convince me that a nonprofit corporation came to the city of Detroit, incurred hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses, and did not have permission from anybody in the city to be here.
Here's the quote: "The entity began work without approval and continued to work after being told not to continue."
I know,
work.
but yes, that's ridiculous. And I'm going to say that's ridiculous. I'm going to call foul because I run a nonprofit, and nobody's got the kind of money where you fly out of town and do things and keep doing them if you don't think you're going to be paid. Mm-hmm. The reality
is
$200,000. The reality is that somebody who worked for the city, and I'm not going to name names, but we can all guess who it might be, somebody formed an agreement they did not have the legal authority to agree to, right? And they brought people here, and then some arts organizations rightfully complained about, why are you bringing these people in? You're not paying them enough money, all this kind of stuff, right? But the reality is they came here upon an invitation, and I stand by that, even though they're not speaking up for themselves. Ultimately, somebody's going to have to pay them. And so either the city leadership is going to be able to get some private entity to bail out the city from this initiative, or somebody needs to investigate. Because the idea that this is a rogue nonprofit organization,
Yep.
And I know of organizations that have worked for public entities, believing they had permission, being told verbally you can start work while we're working out the details of your contract, and then being owed over $1 million in payment. And then they went back and said, wait a minute, where's our invoices? And they said, well, I'm sorry, you weren't authorized to proceed. That's not an unheard of event. I think that sometimes when you have people who work for places like the city of Detroit who are new to the public sector, perhaps they don't understand the limits of their authority, and they think that they can engage in this kind of decision making. So while I'm going to not take an opinion on what city council decided, I think that what the city is communicating is obviously false, and I think it's unfortunate that the city is not willing to say, you know what, we messed up, our bad. But to put that off,
particularly the mayor's office. I want to be clear when you say the city.
Yeah,
the mayor's office is not. Yeah,
yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, go on.
No, the mayor's office is not. Really saying like really what it is. I was watching a little bit of the session and seeing Antoine Bryant, who has been on this show, being grilled, and I'm just like, bruh, say what you're saying. Like, what what are we talking about here, right? Yeah. Because you can say. Because out of the same sentence, you say that they finished after you asked them to stop, but then you executed a contract without approval. Like, so which one is it? So it's a lot of messaging, right? We reached Bridge Detroit. I'm gonna name names. We reached out to Rochelle Riley of the Arts and Culture Department, of which we were not able to get comments. She referred back to Conrad Mallett and Antoine Bryant. Rochelle Riley has been out front, right, in terms of like these mural programs around the city. The press release comes from her in her office. But I do understand that that is a function under the Planning and Development Department, so that ultimately falls under Antoine Bryant's purview. It's $215,000, and so somebody got to answer to that. I mean, and be accountable to that.
And the reality is that Rochelle Riley, we asked ACE Director, this is coming from Metro Times in October, where they say, we asked ACE Director Rochelle Riley via email whether the city of Detroit has a formal process for commissioning public art. She replied, I have to refer that question to City Walls, which has been commissioning murals for several years and just celebrated the completion of its 200th mural. ACE plans to begin commissioning murals in 2024. On Tuesday morning, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan and City Walls project manager Bethany Howard did indeed gather for a press conference to celebrate the 200th mural erected under the program in the Jefferson Chalmers neighborhood. At the conference, Howard clarified to Metro Times the SAM murals were not a City Walls initiative and deferred all questions about them to Riley. Riley said SAM approached the city of Detroit with a proposed Be the Change project following a collaboration with ACE in 2021 when they brought Mexican muralist Carlos Alberto Diaz to paint a piece on the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice. A press release says the city of Detroit contributed $140,000 to the Be the Change campaign. With the 7 murals, this comes out to $20,000 per mural. So a press release in 2023 says that the city has contributed money, has certainly connects Rochelle Riley to this project, and then all of a sudden in 2024 we have no evidence of these conversations or these press releases taking place. I just want to say finally that in 2023 at the Eastside Extravaganza, we had a subcontractor. We had a contractor leading our process, and the day after, 2 days afterwards, I got a bill for $17,000 from the people who did some of the work. And I said, wait a minute, what's this? They said, there's been a change in contract that was approved. I said, approved by who? Not by me. Yeah. They can't approve contracts for me. And so they said, okay, we're going to send you the paperwork where this subcontractor you had approved it. Well, this is in violation with our bylaws. It's in our articles of incorporation. You can't just have anybody committing this money on our behalf. But you know what I ended up doing? Paying it, because legally she was acting on our behalf, and even if she didn't follow the legal process, it would not be right for me to deny payment to somebody who did some work.
We got to take a break. We will be right back. We're going to come right back and more on this story when we return.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the Neighborhood Tech Hub, and more. Members who are residents of the East Side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
All right, welcome back to Authentically Detroit. We're talking about this, the money for these murals that went up in downtown Detroit to the tune of $215,000 that council rejected to pay. Come on, you had a comment.
Yeah, I think it's reflective of just the division and divisiveness of our city government, in the sense that when we're receiving news and we're seeing city council made a decision on it, there's actually a lot of accountability that we need from the mayor's office and from Antoine of just what was the process, what was the decision making, and then what are next steps that I think are important. And also too, just considering that it's for the NFL draft of all things, if we're thinking of projects that are engaging people in the city, those should be processes that we have way much more.
Detroit likes to clean up his house when they know.
Yeah, we're very good at
we
portraying
like to clean
ourselves
up before the people come. Go ahead,
integrity matters over everything. We all make mistakes. If they just said we made a mistake, I can respect that because people do.
Yeah,
and
but you can tell it's so much they're not saying.
But there's so much they're not saying. And as you pointed out, Malachi Barrett, who is a reporter for Bridge Detroit, actually posted a portion of the press release, which has been taken down. I just think, it's unnecessary. It's like, you have a kid who tells a lie, and it's like, why did you do that?
Yeah, it's just pay the...
It just looks petty to me. There's bigger fish to fry. $200,000 is not a big portion of the city budget, but it feels like something else is happening here. So, hopefully this will rein in some of the decision-making by people who work for the city to contract with folks without getting permission. City Council?
Yeah, because that's against the law. All right, y'all. Community concerns and confusion over Brightmoor's stormwater plan. This is by Jenna Brooker at Bridge Detroit. Westside residents and property owners expressed confusion and distrust Thursday during a community meeting on a stormwater management proposal that could relocate 13 homeowners and a number of vacant landowners. The meeting was held to present the proposed Brightmoor Stormwater Improvement Project, a 16-acre pond in the Brightmoor neighborhood to manage stormwater and reduce basement and street flooding. The project would necessitate the city acquiring 13 homes and 50 additional privately owned parcels of land. Attendees shared a range of concerns about a lack of notification and information sharing, as well as inconsistent documentation about the plan as property owners consider the potential of buyouts. Street and basement flooding is common in Detroit and expected to get worse with climate change. As air warms, it holds more moisture, leading to heavier and more intense rainfall. Basement flooding, in addition to the potential of thousands of dollars in personal property loss, can leave behind black mold, causing long-term health issues for residents. To prevent future flooding, more stormwater management projects are needed across the city. Detroit Water and Sewage Department representatives told residents Thursday Brightmoor is an ideal location for this project because of the structure of the land surface or topography. In a separate project, DWSD is installing 24 bioretention gardens in Brightmoor to manage 9 million gallons of stormwater annually, with construction expected to start this summer, according to their spokesperson. The meeting was to gauge whether those directly impacted were on board with the project and that the plans should progress. Residents expressed concern that not enough people were notified about the project and fears that eminent domain would be used to take properties. Attendees also expressed distrust in the department and wanted more written documentation about the project and home offers before indicating if they'd be willing to sell or not. The 2.5-hour meeting had approximately 20 attendees, with 3 of the 13 potentially impacted homeowners present and 2 of the vacant landowners being present. It's messy over there, Donna. What say you?
Hater over here on the east side. Okay. I hear about green stormwater projects going up in the Rouge. I hear them now, all of these projects in Brightmoor where they have to acquire land. And the interesting thing is that ECN has worked with the University of Michigan to document city-owned land on the east side of Detroit adjacent to Jeff Chalmers, which is a flood zone, which floods all the time. And most scientists believe that by installing green infrastructure in the Riverbend neighborhood across from Jeff Chalmers, that just north of Jeff Chalmers, that you could significantly reduce flooding in that neighborhood. Where's the plan? We actually know where the land is. We actually have recommendations, and not a single city funded bioretention project is coming to our community.
Well, it may be coming. Y'all probably just don't know it, just like these Brightmoor people.
I think that
there may be a plan and you don't know about it.
But the reality is that there's not. There's not a watershed management plan on the east side of Detroit, so we'll start with that. And without a watershed management plan, the city cannot necessarily invest those types of resources. It is simply neglect. We talk to people who live on the east side of Detroit who flood all of the time. If there is the plan, there is no action. We have green streets on the west side of Detroit. We have all of these investments in the Rouge community, and now we're going into Brightmoor. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen there. I'm just saying that if you're trying to stop the kind of flooding that's happening in the flood zones on the east side of Detroit, invest in our community. And we have ideas. We actually have a plan, so you can actually bypass some of the time you need to engage in the planning process, because we have it and we shared it with the city in 2019 during the Chrysler, 2018 or 2019, during the community benefits planning process with the city. We shared it with Arthur Jemison at the time. He shared it with all of his planning department and other officials. You can't say you didn't know. We've shared it with Detroit Water and Sewage Department. We actually worked with DWSD on an off-site stormwater management planning process in the what we call the Goodstock community.
Goodstock neighborhood. I remember that.
So we've identified, we've designed, we've measured what the benefit will be. This feels almost insulting, even though I know Brightmoor residents are concerned. I'm even more concerned that despite time after time after time, our communities are flooding. Nobody cares.
You know, being there at ECN for so long, Donna, I used to tell you this, that my phone would ring off the hook when it rained because residents were the rain was triggering for them, and they would call afraid that their basements would flood and that they would lose. I mean, like it is something that is so palpable on the east side, especially within the Jefferson Chalmers neighborhood. And it seems like there's no, not only accountability, but no interest in urgency in engaging residents who have directly been impacted both economically, psychologically, and health-wise by these floods that happen all too often over there.
Yeah, I can remember like sitting in, I think this was 2021, following the June 26th flood, and it was hosted by Stephanie Chang, Joe Tate, and it was about the flood water. And we were told by Gary Brown and others that this will keep happening. We're test running projects in other communities. They actually came to Jefferson Chalmers and told folk that they were testing projects in other communities in regards to flooding. And I do think that it speaks to, one, the lack of urgency there, and two, like, what is the precedent that we're setting if a project in Brightmoor is one that they didn't have consideration over?
Is Brightmoor a floodplain?
I don't know. It's not a floodplain.
That's what I'm saying.
Not to the extent of
it's
Jefferson,
it's not a FEMA design.
Jefferson Chalmers is go ahead.
It's FEMA declared it a floodplain.
Yeah, 100%.
Meaning you have to get flood insurance if you live inside there. You don't have to inside of Brightmoor. When you look at population density, there is no community that is less dense than Brightmoor. And I say that as a person who used to be the executive director of the Brightmoor Community Center. I felt like I was an Idlewild sometimes. I was like, oh, this brings me back to my childhood. There's one house here and one house there. No, I'm not trying to dismiss the needs and the responsibility of the city to protect that community. But the disproportionate interest in Brightmoor in comparison to some of these East Side communities is noted. And the city needs a green infrastructure plan. The reality is, if they wanted to come east, our residents in the LEAP Coalition footprint are very knowledgeable about green infrastructure and would not need as much convincing because we've already been doing the work over the years. Through the LEAP planning process and all of our planning process education that we've been doing, some of the small grants that we have been reinvesting money in. Now, I want to also point out that Chandler Park does have a marshlands, but that was paid for by private dollars. The city of Detroit did not invest those dollars. And so we need something equivalent to that. Again, in the Riverbend neighborhood to address flooding in Jeff Chalmers and possibly in the neighborhood that is just north of Jefferson, the Jefferson community. What is that?
Clairpoint?
No, not Clairpoint.
Heritage?
You know, the neighborhood that sits next to
Rivertown?
No, it's
Give me the boundaries.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, maybe across the street.
It is
yeah, that place. That place.
Okay, you know where the grocery store is? That little the shopping district and the houses, those new houses over there, relatively new houses.
Yeah, you're talking about where the Morgan Estates?
Jefferson Village.
Jefferson Village.
Jefferson Village. Yes.
I was like,
Jefferson Village. I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure it out for you. Okay.
I
apologize for the brain. But anyway, Jefferson Village, the area that's just north of Jefferson Village, I don't know if that's East Village. We may need some green infrastructure there. There's lots of opportunities. There's lots of vacant land. A lot of it is city owned. The city can come up with better plans. And so to try to concentrate all of the investment in this area speaks to something that I don't like.
Yeah. All right, come to the east side. That's the message.
Yes.
All right, come to the east side. Let's talk to Kamau. I'm ready to talk to him.
Yeah, for sure.
Kamau is a polito-cultural organizer from Detroit's East Side with passions for community and storytelling. Kamau uses political education and cultural strategy, I want to know what that means, to support concentrations of energy, justice, leadership, development, and co-governance in order to build seismic.
Semizaic. Yeah,
Semizaic.
it's a word.
There we go. That word, whatever he said. Our unified dream of organized residents of Southeast Michigan, we must be persistently curious and care for each other. That is to say, movement must start with developing the power and solidarity of Black Detroiters. All right, so let's get started. So
before we start, because we're celebrating 40 years, I want to say, what was your connection to Eastside Community Network as a young person?
It was my first job that I ever worked when I was 18 through GDYT, working the summer camp. So
I got to hire Kamau.
It's been on my radar for years, just because it was the first place that
Was it your first job?
It was literally my first job. Yeah,
and he was much more quiet back then.
Yeah, I think much more just tame, but
except for when he was wrangling children, and then I got to see a side of him that I never saw. But
I don't like to take credit for everything, but I think the Eastside Community Network has been
part of my story.
So,
for sure.
Invested in leadership. So, as you answer this first question, what is your background as an organizer?
Yeah. So so my background, I always like to say it's inclusive of a lot of the things my parents pumped into me. I was one of those kids that if there was a free program or if there was something available, Mosaic or DAPSAP or Youthville, whatever it was, I was in it. And because they wanted me to be engaged with the city. And so I would say that's where it starts. A interest in Detroit, but also to recognizing that there are things here, there are programs, there are needs that we can address. I kind of fell into specifically this field of work, and of course, starting at ECN, spending some time at the Kellogg Foundation.
But we gonna claim you.
No, feel free. And also too, I do think, a lot of the organizing that I was doing when I was at Wayne State, which was focused around Black male retention. I think the year I went in, there's a Michigan Chronicle article where they said 11% of Black men graduate from Wayne State. And so we formed our own org. We helped form other orgs, queer, trans people of color, APSO. We had a sister organization, and we basically did wraparound services, polling, survey. We did 2 $30,000 events, 2 back-to-back years, the highest funded events at Wayne State that had happened from students, all to kind of build this program that would help folk graduate, which by the time I left, it was about 34% for Black men.
Yeah. You guys partner with Dr. Wilson.
With Dr. Absolutely.
Huge part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so coming from that, I, of course, wanted to get more engaged and what are the higher stakes? How do I do this? How do I touch policy? How do I touch communities? And, fell into We the People of Michigan to do that, working in a wide array of things. If it matters, I want to know about it. But more specifically, public safety as well as energy democracy have been the 2 areas that I've been locked in on for the past few years. And so that's kind of my story. And I guess what I mean by political cultural organizer is just pulling in. There's a lot that when we learn organizing and just the basic sense that doesn't necessarily have our cultural and racial context that we have to bring in around Black folk. We like to have
standing ovation.
Yeah, we like to have joy and be inspired in our spaces. And so how do we bring that into our organizing? How do we make I'm always going to forget who says the quote, but we have to make the movement irresistible for people. And so a lot of it comes from wanting to do that. Make the movement
irresistible to people. Wow.
So did you bring that to We the People of Michigan, or did you learn that from We the People of Michigan?
I would say it's a mix of both. And so we're a statewide org. We have folk down here all the way up to the UP, on the west side of the state as well. And so being statewide means that we have organizers that look many different ways. We have undocumented organizers. We have folk in the UP who are indigenous. And it actually requires us to bring our context, our cultural context of what does Black political power mean? What does it look like? How do you embed that with other cultures and then form that solidarity needed? And so for the majority of my time there, I actually was kind of just I'm sitting in the mix, I'm doing my thing. And then I recognized there was actually the importance of stepping up to being a lead organizer and embedding that into the organization. Wonderful. To where now we've started to expand our team out in Benton Harbor, which is great. We're expanding in Detroit this summer, our team, to about 4 people, organizers that'll be on the ground. And so really recognizing that there's an importance in having the Black voice show up in these statewide organizations and racial solidarity. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Can you talk a little bit about, this thread that got our producer's attention around...
Just me being annoying on Twitter.
well, okay. Let me back up. Y'all, if y'all are not already, y'all need to follow this man on Twitter, because you're going to get really just a healthy dose of funny, a healthy dose of, hard-hitting commentary, and sort of everything in between. I want to talk about your public safety narratives thread when we come back. More with Kamau after this.
Yeah.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the wellness network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
And we back with Kamau of We the People of Michigan, and we're talking about a really interesting Twitter thread that he created detailing, public safety narratives. Number one, tell us what led you to create this thread.
Yeah, so some context, I had been organizing in public safety for a couple years. Around 2022 in regards to the Shot Spotter contract in City Council, and then 2 last year engaging some abolition workshops as well as some street theater and things educating people on surveillance. And so it really stemmed from me watching, I'm that nerd that will watch any speech, state of city, state of whatever, I'll sit and I'll watch it.
Oh, you're in good company.
You like
yeah. I enjoy those. And so
good company.
I was watching specifically the 2-hour press conference that the mayor and DPD had hosted that was basically presenting what is the progress, what is the report card in regards to crime and public safety for the past year. And why I think there, are many things within there that are up for conversation and discussion. I do think the big trend and narrative that was presented is that things are improving, things are getting better, and that surveillance is a big part of why things are getting better in regards to crime in the city of Detroit. And so really wanted to, one, shine some light on what is, how did we get here in regards to this being a narrative, and then 2, also speak to what are still the gaps, what are the questions we have, and next steps that we can take that actually push back a little bit on surveillance and, ask, is this the decision we want to put all of our chips into? And so that was a lot of the spirit that went into, of course, posting up.
Yeah. I want to ask you about, why. So you're essentially highlighting a lot of the messaging, right, that is habitually reinforced by Chief White, by the mayor around surveillance technology and around public safety. Do you think that their messaging is effective?
That's loaded. It's effective in the sense that it creates a dominant narrative for folk. In regards to how we see Detroit, our orientation around public safety, I say there's 4 narratives in question. There's the first one, which is kind of the broader Detroit is barren, please get out at all costs, crime is rampant narrative that many of us have grown up in. There's the second narrative that suggests that they've tried everything. Lawmakers and electeds have tried everything. They need to lean further into surveillance, more police resources. And there's the third narrative I say would be that there's a division between crime prevention organizations and folk that are wanting to put some sanctions on these things. And the fourth is that, of course, it's not that we're trying to create predictive policing, which is the old terminology they used for this. We're trying to create more resources. So I think those are very effective in shaping people's perception of Detroit, because many of us, I grew up on the East Side, so I know friends I grew up with who are now in prison, and I know family who've been shot and killed, and those narratives are really effective for pulling out those emotions in us of it actually is really dangerous. We actually do need more tools. Why aren't things working? And often we're not asking the questions of why is response time so low, or why do we not have access to data and transparency around what is working outside of a small PowerPoint slide. And so we're not asking those questions because they're shaping the questions that we can ask. And often,
that's a Detroit thing, but it's also a Philadelphia thing,
100%,
a Washington, D.C.
100%.
thing, an Oakland thing. It's a black folks thing. Wherever we live, we're dangerous.
That was the point that I was going to make. We cannot have this conversation and not layer it in race. But Duggan doesn't talk about race. 100%. He doesn't talk about root causes.
Colorblind.
It would mean telling the truth about the technology and also, too, its track record. When we look at ShotSpotter, when we look at Project Greenlight, when we look at even PredPol, which ShotSpotter absorbed last year, they actually absorbed this company, which is a predictive policing tool. All of them have a track record of disproportionately targeting minority communities, which is why some cities have canceled.
But that's the purpose of modern day policing is to
100%.
Contain black folks, right? We got to contain these folks. We got to put them in a place. We got to protect the community from these people, except for the good ones, and we can let them in as long as they follow all the rules and don't ever disobey or disagree with me. I mean, and I've been recently introduced to the term propaganda, and if you look at how many television shows do you watch, how many movies are told from a perspective of promoting, this kind of aggressive policing without us, not just the cop shows themselves, but I mean, 24, if you look at all of the Law and Order shows, all of them sort of portray
Patrol and all of the things.
Starting even with little kids, because Paw Patrol, starting at a very young age. I remember one of the first TV shows I watched when I was a kid, this is going to tell my age, is Adam 12, right? And but we watch Kojak. So many shows Chips are centered around
Miami
crime
Vice.
and safety that we have been socialized to see police as protectors of our community,
100%.
even when they don't protect us.
And so that's what you're describing to is an all outright narrative campaign.
Absolutely.
Right? On part of, pop culture in Hollywood. And so for folks who say that narrative don't matter, it does, because it influences how we proliferate into society. But in your thread, you also offer counter narratives.
Yeah. I think the most important one is for people to center the history of movement and beauty in the city of Detroit. We're a vanguard for organizing, whether it's
Donna, you say that all the time.
Whether it's labor organizing in the 60s or
you get ready to make her jump up and down.
I mean, because
I'm just giving more standing ovations over here. I need a button or something.
We have to think about the history of this region when we think of the Rums here. We think of the Flint sit-down strike set the entire precedent for union organizing in the country. And so when we're thinking about surveillance and policing, we've gotten wins along the way. We have it's a lacking ordinance, but we have an ordinance that many cities don't have because of pushback. We have community benefits ordinance. We have these things that have happened. And so I think it's important for people to recognize that, one, it's not this insurmountable force that you're going up against. We've actually won things before.
But it feels like a lot of the wins are Pyrrhic victories, we won on paper, but we don't really have any power. It just, you put an ordinance and you don't enforce it. And it feels like we do a lot of that in our community.
You put an ordinance in that is not meant to benefit folks. So Charity was on here and she was like, we're one of the only cities with a community benefits ordinance. And I'm like, well, we had one that was, drafted by the people and for the people, Proposal A. I don't know if y'all remember this. Yeah. And then the mayor's office commissioned Scott Benson to draft Proposal B, which ultimately passed because they put a lot of money into it. That really locks out so many important stakeholders nonprofit institutions, like businesses, of the community benefits process. I mean, but we could say we have a community benefits ordinance. Come on, y'all.
Well, part of my pushback here is that it's important for us, especially too in organizing and movement, to center those steps. Like often our mountaintop has many nested goals. And so if we're going for a community ordinance, it's not because it's the blanket solution for everything. It's that it gives us another tool to use.
But it wasn't a tool for us. It was the opposite of a tool. With Stellantis, it was the opposite of a tool.
Which I would
the city pushed the agenda. The city created a
collected the
6-week
land.
process. The city collected the land. And then after this, underprepared, we hadn't even invested the environmental impact before all these approvals were granted, at which point there was no time. And then the city went to city council and said, well, you don't have a chance. You are bound by law to approve everything these non-elected citizens agreed to in 6 weeks. And so to me, to bypass the city planning commission, to bypass all of the investigatory bodies of the city, to bypass any meaningful community input, this plant was built directly behind our organization, and we had no voice in the community benefits process. There's a liquor store, little party store that's right in the footprint there. And the guy said, wait a minute, what about my rights? Is anybody going to listen to me? Nope, sir. You are a business owner. You don't matter. And so I feel as though sometimes when you have the pretense of power and there is no power, it makes people even more cynical and angry. And so I think, yes, we do need to have steps directed towards that, but I don't want
like
to
how you described that. That was
create
cool.
something as a victory.
Yeah.
When it feels to people who've experienced that as a failure. And it feels like we had less power. My city council person did not have the legal authority at that time, according to the city, to challenge an agreement reached by 9 private citizens.
Yeah. I'd propose organizing is losing until you win, though. In the sense that, like, I 100% like get the perspective around framing. The reason we frame them as victories is because it's actually the momentum that's important more so than it is the actual.
But then the city gets to brag and say, "Look what we're doing."
Yeah,
for
100%.
you. And so it
but
becomes.
you can't own the city's narrative. You create your own.
My narrative is it's a failure. And my narrative is not going to be. I am not going to be calling an apple an orange because it makes the people.
Yeah,
I think the reality is that in that instance, money ended up overpowering the people. And I think the lesson that we should learn is that we can't let money overpower the people. We need to engage more people in the process of understanding that, so that all the money that you spend is not going to change people's opinions at the ballot box. We didn't do enough organizing on the ground, honestly, for Proposal A to win. Yeah. And I think that you can't do all the organizing during the election year. People in Detroit need to be better organized so that when we come up with things like Proposal A, we have networks that we can get to. And that's what I want to partner with you on this year ahead, so that we can we can have real victories, even if they're small, right?
I agree. Because peaks are not just the policy change or policy addition. It's also capacity, like growing capacity over time. And so how do you add folk to leadership and create leaders who are now going out and talking to folk about the issue and educating? And so I would agree.
And how do we act collectively to do that, right? Yeah. Because you don't have all the power. I don't have all the power. But how many people in the justice space are willing to collaborate on any of these efforts? I've got the power.
Come on. I'm sorry. I was trying to jump in.
No, that was a good jump in.
I want you to finish talking about the other counter narratives that you wanted to cascade.
Yeah, no, and I also appreciate because these come with nuance too, and so I do appreciate like the push there. I'd say the second narrative is like, one, electeds haven't done everything in their power, which is kind of what we were just talking about. In regards to, sometimes they'll show us like, I think Mayor Sheffield has worn on her shoulder that like, this is my ordinance, it's effective, and then last fall we saw like, oh, this actually isn't working for how we review surveillance, or we could have had this information out sooner. And so often it's actually pushing back and saying that it's not just that you're doing everything in your power. It's a lot of other things that prevent crime. We all know the things in terms of root causes.
Yeah, it's iterative work. It ain't never finished.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that would be the second one. The third, I think, is just resisting the narrative that like we as folk who are pushing back on policing didn't grow up here, or we're divided with crime prevention orgs. Like, one, we know all those people because we grew up with those people. We grew up around those folk. I always tell the story of, being in the 4th grade is when I saw my first gun at school, where a friend brought it to school and showed us.
What school is that?
Dang, I don't put my school out there. Well, I went to Merritt over on Altair as a kid, and so it was, it wasn't in the way of like, oh, I'm about to do something or like harm anyone. It was kind of like, look, I have a gun. Like, this is cool.
Right.
And I always laugh at, when we got in trouble, they called us all down to write like an essay of what happened that morning, basically to like telling our friend. And I remember writing an essay about everything else. So like, I had milk this morning, I had an apple, like I didn't say anything. And I just think about how like, when the narrative that we've been presented about crime and who experiences crime, who experiences gun violence, it doesn't tell the full story. And there's a lot more nuance to it in regards of like, we're fighting for a pushback on policing because we grew up here and we recognize that it's important. And so I would say this, the third and the fourth is just, there has to be sanctions on surveillance, on technology. We're seeing the rapid expansion of both that and also policing. When we look at Cop City, it's something they're going to now try in Baltimore. ShotSpotter expanding across the country, as well as, license plate detectors and all of these different things. Metal detectors now when you go down to Greektown. And so there has to be more sanctions and more tools that we have that can actually push back and we can use for our organizing.
Yeah, so when I look at a win, I look at something like ShotStopper, and Alea Harvey Quinn and Force Detroit is having produced a win, right? Because
community violence intervention.
Intervention. I think that's amazing to me, and I think that organizers made that happen. So I want to step up and celebrate those organizers. Alea is a mentee of mine, so I'm super proud of her. But I would be anyway, right? And all of the people operating in that space have been saying for years that we need to somehow provide support to young people, to people to assist and intervene when there's conflict, and it's happening. And I could not be happier. And I believe that it happened well beyond what the mayor, so even to the extent that there were crime reductions, those crime reductions were happening in places where those violence intervention resources were invested, and has nothing to do with that technology. So let's redirect that money, right?
And I remember sitting down with Alea and around the time ShotSpotter was going on, and her showing like these are the places where there's gaps, where there isn't crime prevention organization, like our work isn't able to touch because there's not enough capacity. And so I do think that it was great to see them invite her up to speak, towards the end of it.
Right, it was a very small part.
She got like a 2-minute, 3-minute.
I was
but this is the conversation.
We're going to blur her up over here.
Yeah, like this is a conversation that's more important, is the folk that are like at the point of attack, like talking to youth, talking to young people, talking to previously incarcerated folk, and actually doing that work. And I do think that they spent the majority of the time leaning towards the surveillance and the things that DPD specifically.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I just wanted to raise that up as a victory because I agree with you. There are victories. I'm not trying to suggest they're not. I just took issue with that one, but there have been victories. There have been victories, and I think it's important for us to call them out. I think that we are not powerless, and people need to understand that we're not powerless. One of the other things that it demonstrated was the fact that all of these crime prevention organizations have been around for years. Yeah. They're now all working together, and that took a certain type of leadership because, we don't like
leadership and resources. These folks were under-resourced for years.
Right, but also just leadership. I'm saying even to get to the point of demanding it, you had to be willing to put your ego aside long enough to co-sponsor or to stand together. And are you seeing that in other areas of the community that you're working? Because you're also working on energy justice and on
whatever is. I'm of course electoral and legislative. Yes. But
are you seeing any examples of that in the energy justice space where we're coming together better?
Yeah, I would say that, and like one of our close partners is Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition, and I will say that. I'm going to scapegoat DTE because they're my arch nemesis, and I looked at my bill this morning. And for context, I am a new homeowner, so like this is my first
congratulations
winter bill. Yeah, appreciate it. Over in the east side, and it's my first like winter bill that I've seen, and so it's a little bit smoke right now. But I think that when we consider environmental solutions, the language is becoming. I wish I saw that.
Let me see. You and me both. Twice that.
And I think like the narrative is starting to become way much more accessible for people around what environmental justice is. I think energy is one of the very bare bones examples where we're seeing it, where folk are now saying like, this actually doesn't make sense for us to have one monopoly over our energy system that is not accountable to anything but shareholders. And we're seeing not only the repeated like outages, shutoffs, increasing rates, but we're seeing the increase of such. And so I would say that we've seen more capacity added to this conversation. I know, MHJC had been leading on this for years, and now something we're touching, Michigan United. I know ECN even has opened up the conversation around energy as well. And so I do think
I get it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. I said as such a couple years ago I was a keynote for the Downtown Detroit Partnerships annual meeting. And the question was asked of me, like, what's really salient? What do we need to be doing? And I said, we need to look at DTE and its monopoly on the city of Detroit. And do you know this corporation unleashed an outright campaign on me? Like, they went to war
very quick
with me on that. But I stand by it because it's speaking of democracy, is completely undemocratic. For DTE to have the monopoly it does and for it to be privatized, but also for them to be able to go to the Michigan Public Service Commission multiple times a year, request these rate hikes, and get them granted. They're talking to them now for another
40 uninterrupted years of Republican rule. That gave them complete power. The Michigan Public Service Commission was a rubber stamp to everything these energy utilities wanted. You're seeing a little bit more accountability now with the new Michigan Public Service Commission.
I'm gonna push back on you a little bit, but I would agree that
you have earned the right to push back on me.
well, one, I do want to speak to what you're speaking to in regards to like the bridging of organizations. Now, it's important to remember that 2022 we beat a rate.
We did. We did. I remember this.
And that was a combined effort of, Defend Black Voters Coalition, the work we were doing.
People had never heard of the Public Service Commission, and they were showing up to those meetings.
It was the first time people were aware that. It was the first time we had a hearing.
I remember this.
Issue.
And they were here. And they came to the city.
Well, I mean, Joel Hunrani here is, in his last day working for the city as a director of sustainability, brought members of the Public Service Commission to my office. And I was able to bring forth a PowerPoint that Jackson Copel had been circulating.
Shout out, Jackson.
And have conversation about that and speak intelligently. I could not have done that without better cooperation between our sectors. Other than that, I just would have been speaking from, my bill is high. But I was actually able to document some things. And then following that, I'm sure they met with some other people, and then they had a hearing. And that's when I say they're more responsive, because they haven't been in Detroit before.
Last year was the hearing was the first time, and then last year was the first time they had a series of hearings.
They had a series,
And so I think that what's important with like energy, like one, this touches way much more broad from Detroit when we're thinking of UPCO and the UP consumers on the west side of the state. We have to accept that DTE is one of the most powerful political actors in the state of Michigan in regards to just a few years ago, our legislator, 140 of 146 of them had taken money from DTE for their campaigns. That's changed now. There's actually less. Part of the work of orgs like ours that have like said, hey, we're not going to endorse or we're not going to support what you're doing if you're taking money from DTE, and making that a hard line, and also to the growing conversation. But I do think that when we consider their power politically, it's not just a Republican thing, it's a broad thing that we have to.
No, I agree it's bipartisan. In fact, I'm new to the board of Voters Not Politicians.
Oh, okay, cool.
And super excited about that. They're 501c3 and C4, and I had my orientation today, and we had some conversations about just that very topic. Do you think there's a possibility of a ballot initiative to limit corporate investments in campaigns?
I love this. So it's something we've talked about, because that was initially an idea that sat in a bill package, a bill package that was killed in 30 days last year. We've now accepted that with with Dem leadership, it's not something that they are going to push for. Progressives in the legislature they can make that push, but they're often going to get squashed pretty soon. And so we think it's something to shoot for within the next few years, but through some smaller steps, local resolutions, building capacity, and actually building up there. I think that is the path that we're going to have to take.
I would love to be part of a ballot initiative drive to make it sooner rather than later. People are conscious of it. I think that, you can put it on the ballot by getting a certain number of signatures and do your education campaign. And even if somehow it failed, there would be a threat. Right, you'd have to see,
and you have an understanding of how many people,
and a change in conversation.
A lot of times, what will happen is when you put a ballot initiative up there, the legislature gets moving to, to change what you're doing, sort of like Proposal A and B. But when people do it, then it forces the legislature's hand. So I'd love to have that conversation moving forward, because I think as long as that big money is in politics. But I'm curious about this. You said that they gave money to all of these people. How much money on average were they giving?
I can show you offline. I got a whole spreadsheet. But sometimes they're a little embarrassing. It's $5,000.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we've seen
I just want to see how cheap people are.
The numbers are much higher in the Senate, but in the House, the numbers are pretty embarrassing.
We got to wrap up. Kamau, you have to come back. This was
for sure.
an amazing and interesting conversation. Love the back and forth. Listen, if you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. All right, it's time for shout-outs. Donna, you got some shout-outs?
Yes, I would like to shout out Ms. Charity Dean for sitting in this chair. I'd like to shout out the staff of Eastside Community Network. What a wonderful place to work. I'm sick, and they're all telling me, stay home and take care of yourself. We need you 100%. And I never felt pressure to hurry up and come back to work, because it felt like people cared about me. And, that matters. I think that the way that you are received when you're ill matters. Shout out to you, Orlando, for also supporting me. Thank you.
Always. Come on, you got shout outs?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out, of course, everyone at We the People Michigan, specifically our Migrant Leaders School, People's Power Program, who is working on energy, and also to the entire alignment table, so Detroit Action, Michigan United, MEJC, 482 Forward, all names I'm sure you all have heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So. I want to shout out Dewan Dandridge. In Black Leaders Detroit, last Friday, he held a prayer breakfast, right? And for me, it was really reminiscent of a lot of those kinds of events growing up in the church that that are now taboo. Like, you don't hear about organizations having prayer breakfasts anymore. But I appreciate his authenticity and his bravery to hold such an event that really invoked spirit and belief in something higher than ourselves at work on behalf of ourselves. And it was just a good time. It was a good time of fellowship. It was a good time of prayer. He packed that room out. And that event is still, sticking with me, because it awakened some nostalgic feelings that I didn't know I had around those kinds of gatherings. A good time, good food, and amazing prayers went forth on behalf of Black businesses in the city of Detroit who, have some amazing stories. And so I wanted to shout Dewan out. We've had him on this show numerous times, but shout out to him. I appreciate that. And shout out to you, Kamau, for saying yes. And we got you on the record, number one, that you're going to be partnering with the Democracy Project to do some stuff, and that you will be coming back to the pod, right? Follow him on Twitter. Give people your Twitter name. You tried to escape by.
What is my Twitter name? Oh, I guess it goes search engine, but it's SRCHENGN.
Say it again.
Search engine, SRCHENGN.
Okay, so I'm looking at your Twitter.
Oh no.
And
it's a mess.
Is it correct? Am I reading this correctly? At Mayor Mike Duggan blocked you.
Oh, that was from when I was blocked for like 2 days on Twitter by the mayor's Twitter. Yeah.
His Twitter is
so wonderful to read. This is so hilarious to me. I'm like,
that was a whole story.
It is so satisfactorily chaotic and I love it. All right.
Yes.
Thank y'all for listening. We'll see y'all next time.